There are a lot of songs that can move me to tears. My Immortal, Breaking the Habit, Tragedy Plus Time, Standout Fit In, Enigma, Welcome to the Black Parade, Heaven, Kokoranashi. I get more emotional listening to music than a role player gets when they finally join a Roll20 campaign. That being said, I usually don't cry the second time listening to any of these songs in a week, which is why Starlight Brigade surprises me by turning me into a newborn infant every time I listen to it, and definitely every time I watch the music video. I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out why I feel so strongly for Torp's musical masterpiece, and I've come to the conclusion that while the endearing characters, stunning animation, perfect musicality, and powerful lyrics would all pull the tears out of me in a vacuum, there's something a bit stronger lying just underneath the surface of this collaborative piece of art. Something about this piece just speaks to me, and it's a big part of what's kept me motivated as I struggle to find my place in the artistic world of the modern day. Looking at the animation in this video makes me feel like I'm watching Toonami again. The cleaned up version of an older animation aesthetic puts me back in the mindset of a little kid who just got to see anime for the first time in his life, and it makes me want to make something even better than what I'm seeing. And that really is the most compelling thing about this animation to me. Something about Starlight Brigade inspires me in a very powerful way, and it's powerful enough that I want to smear my love and affection all over it like the jam on my morning biscuits. My name is Jordan Samansky, resident English nerd and fun lover extraordinaire. It's nice to meet you all, and welcome to Starlight Brigade, the anthem of the artist. Many people, like myself, only started listening to Tupperware Remix Party after they heard the band play along Ninja Sex Party, whom they also only started listening to after they watched the Game Grumps and heard that Dan Avidan had a band. As one of these mindless Americans who didn't really listen to the Canadian funk band that made Starlight Brigade, I wasn't really equipped to write this script with an accurate perspective of Twerp's style, how it developed, and thus what drove them to make Starlight Brigade in the first place. So I set myself the truly grueling task of listening to Twerp's entire discography, or at least what I could find of it, to further my research purely to better prepare myself to make this video. And in doing so, I discovered two things. First, that Twerp does actually include vocals in their songs that don't have guest singers, they just use a voice box in those cases. And second, that Twerp isn't really that great at coming up with lyrics, or at least aren't good at coming up with lyrics that make use of said voice box. The songs are great, but you have to admit, having at least one song per EP that's about how we're all on a pale blue dot is either not very diverse writing or not very good theming, if the decision to do so was as intentional as I suspect. This by no means is a bad thing though. Twerp's music is largely instrument focused, and when they do have lyrics, their songs are mostly as amusing and lighthearted as NSP's, with a similar focus on sex as a comedic theme. Twerp also was heavily influenced by techno, disco, and rock music from the 70s and 80s, which is the same time period from which NSP draws its own rock and pop culture references. The most shocking thing about Twerp and NSP's partnership, therefore, is the fact that they weren't developed as the same band altogether from the very beginning. For two separate bands featuring such similar comedic aesthetics and the same time period of musical influence to form during the 2000s but still be largely unaware of the other's existence for some time, that's a stroke of chance that I didn't really think was possible. That's exactly what happened though, and after it did, it was only a matter of time before the two bands got to know each other and started working together, featuring Dan Avidan on vocals for the first time with Twerp on their 2015 single, The Hit. Which, now that I say that, makes me wonder if Twerp knew just how far they'd go when working with Ninja Sex Party, and how far Ninja Sex Party would go when working with Twerp. Though I guess you could argue that both of their careers were kind of made by this point anyway. Anyway, what does all this have to do with Starlight Brigade? Well, everything really. Ninja Sex Party's greatest strength is and always has been its lyrical writing, and with the frequent intercourse of Danny's writing and Twerp's instrumentals, both bands have been elevated to new heights as a result. It was only upon these new heights that either band was able to create Starlight Brigade at all, and this ties in very strongly with the theme of the work itself, but that theme wouldn't be nearly representable enough without the animators involved. Knights of the Light Table, the studio behind Starlight Brigade, is run by Patrick Stannard. He was one of the animators and, for one episode in Season 2, storyboard artists working on Netflix's Castlevania series. Pat here was an animator on every episode of Season 1, some of the best animation in the series as a whole, and the episode he helped storyboard, The River, also includes some of the best action sequences I've seen out of the series. A series, mind you, that contains some of the best animation I've ever seen in my life. So yeah, big animation boner from me. Joining Patrick as director and art director respectively, India Swift and Michael Doig are not only regulars on the Kotal team, but they also have a Twitter and YouTube channel together where they play games and stream their animation process. So if that sounds interesting, there's a link in the description you should click. Just a quick perusal of the animations they had linked to their YouTube had me stunned by the sheer variety of different styles these two can craft and master alone. And with a team of animators at their disposal, it's no wonder Starlight Brigade and Magnum Bullets turned out as amazingly as they did. The writers, musicians, animators, and even fan base of Starlight Brigade really gave it their all here. All of these immensely passionate people and all their diverse skill sets and similar interests were what Starlight Brigade needed, and thus what it demonstrates as a theme. It is a song, it is a video, it is a story that required the cooperation of a great many passionate people to make into a reality. This supports the central theme of Starlight Brigade, that dreams pursued through adversity with friends are always worth pursuing. We'll come back to all of these guys later on, but for now, I think we've got the picture, so let's start it rolling and see how it plays. After our logos fade in and out of a starlit sky, the very first thing we see is a boy's hand reaching out to it, and one of the brightest stars above shooting off screen as the very first sound plays. The hand balks, and we cut to a wide shot of this expansive sky with our two first characters stood on a rocky ledge beneath it. The owner of the hand we saw before is perched on top of an older gentleman. We'll say his grandfather, based on the white beard. Then we see all the other stars in the sky zoom off to the right, and as the heavy bass tones pick up, we cut to a close-up of these two characters with their jaws dropped in horror. The camera pans over and dollies back to reveal that the two of them are staring at a massive black pyramid, which is pulling all of the stars into itself. We cut to one last look at the protagonist's face before the first snare beat cuts to him as a young man. In the first 20 seconds, we are told exactly what the plot of this entire music video is centered around. BBEG takes all the stars and our distraught protagonist can do nothing to stop him, but it goes deeper than that. Notice how we're introduced to these characters. The boy already sat atop his grandfather's shoulders, and the grandfather in question lifting him up, both of them overwhelmed by the expanse of sky above them, but they stand out against it as a backdrop. The smallest thing in this entire shot is the boy, but because of the previous shot showing his hand, he is the first thing our eyes are drawn to. The center of our view is the stars, but the center of our focus is Strive. At least it is until we see the big slab of something awful taking away the light of his world. And it's no coincidence that our first cutaway from his horrified expression is to his melancholy one much later in life, but I'll talk about that later. We then cut to a shot of Strive's back as he reaches up to the void and Dan starts singing. Strive's grandfather approaches him from behind the wreckage, and now Strive is sat upon a higher point and his grandfather stands below him looking up. It's similar to the first time we see them, but Strive is sat higher on his own this time. Grandpa didn't help him get there. This also changes the perspective of both of our characters. Grandpa sees Strive feeling upset, but Strive sees that which he and the whole universe lost. Our following shot shows a large gem in Strive's chest that's glowing a bright blue. And I think we see a similar gem on Grandpa's chest as well, only much smaller. This is where our lighting comes into play, as Grandpa's gem is dark while Strive's glows brighter than anything else in the shot, until we see something even brighter than that engulf both of them in light. The moment this happens, Strive's eyes grow bigger in awe while Grandpa's shrink in shock. Okay, I'm sorry, but there's just so much to unpack here, particularly since the color and lighting of this music video are so carefully tied into these characters. Every shot where Strive is found in bright light, he is active, he is ecstatic, he is determined and full of life, but his grandpa is the opposite. Grandpa looks kinda stone-faced in the beginning when the two of them are stargazing, as though the sky is nothing special to him. When the stars are gone, the only thing that gives him concern is Strive's concern. We do get to see his full colors in the light of the sky, but we also see them perfectly well in the dark and the dim. This all denotes Grandpa as a relatively easygoing person, content to live in the light or the darkness as long as he's with Strive, not really excited by either. Speaking of colors, Grandpa has many blues and whites that denote a sense of innocence and calm about him. His blue also represents a dream and quiet longing, but the browns of his cloak show that he is grounded and stable, and this brown practically eclipses all of his blue as soon as the black pyramid comes into focus. His cloak even seems to have some red in the light of the stars, but immediately shifts to brown the moment they start to get taken away. It also helps a lot that this cloak is wrapped around his form, as if to say that he's so entrenched in his stability and willingness to live with what he has that his hidden desires for more have no means of being released. Strive's grandpa represents fear, he represents sedentary life, and he represents both the contentedness with what you have and the denial of hope for better. At the same time, he also represents that part of us and of Strive that is so averse to risk that we would rather live in a cage if it means that we'll get to live at all. This is shown in the shot where Grandpa's reaching a hand out to Strive to tell him not to go, because he's scared for Strive's life more than he is for Strive's well-being. Strive still tears up as he runs off, though, because he's leaving that contented, stable, but stagnant life behind. It's also worth noting that our falling starship in between these two shots of Strive and his grandpa is bathed in light and color as it falls, but devoid of either when it's on the ground. This mirrors the feelings that Strive has about the opportunity this ship presents to him in both moments. The first time he sees it, it's a shining beacon of hope, but the second, it is dark and foreboding. He finally has a chance to leave, and it's scary. It's only after a brief moment of contemplation in which the song illustrates Grandpa's words for us that Strive finally takes hold of the ship's controls and the whole thing bursts into life. Strive is surrounded by color and light, and we get to see his determination for the first time. His fear vanishes as soon as the darkness fades. Another thing we get to see for the first time in full clarity is his outfit since becoming an adult, and I already added character design to lighting and color a little bit ago, so let's keep the ball rolling along. Strive's primary colors include a set of blues, whites, and blacks, similar to that of his grandpa, but there is one striking difference that sets them apart. Actual red. Strive's blues and whites represent a calm, quiet, and innocent approach to life, but the red of his cape denotes a passionate fire draped over him as well. Where the browns of his grandpa enclose the man in a cage of stable stagnation, Strive's red cape flows freely, not weighing him down, but instead pushing him forward. And this is the part where I freak out, because Strive is nothing like Danny Sexbang, despite being outed by Swift to be Dan's character. In fact, it's pretty clear from the outset that Strive isn't just Dan's character at all. I mean, for one thing, he is the only one of Danny's counterparts that is not sexualized whatsoever, whether it's Danny Sexbang himself or the animated version of him that appears in stuff like Heartboner, also animated by the lovely Knights of the Light Table, or just Dan Avidan himself being hot as fuck the way that he is. Strive has no relation to any of that side of life. Even Release the Kraken's King Danny is sitting on a throne of bone boners and surrounded by hot chicks, but not Strive. There's no mention of romance in him that isn't associated with the romantic ideal of reaching the stars and fighting against an oppressive force. His very design denotes that of a star-struck child with a passion-fueled dream, ready to fight against the ideals of the defeatist Gurren Lagann style. This is wildly different from the shallow, sex-based nature of Danny's public image as a musical artist, and it's much closer to who Dan is as a person, but it's also not bound to him. So just who the hell is he anyway? India Swift tweeted a while back that Strive was actively drawn to be somewhat androgynous, and I personally think that this was done to make him a self-insert for the audience. He's not trying to be a masculine sex icon, he's a soft boy with soft features that are easy for most people to relate to. The only way that Strive actually does kind of resemble Danny is in his visual design, again with the blues showing a dream state mentality. But the red cape Strive wears is far shorter than Danny's blue one, and it's fully red this time, not just lined on the inside. Again, showing that passion is what drives Strive, and it does not restrict Strive the way that Danny's blue cape of Wet Dreams looks like something Edna Mode would toss in a blender. The heavy use of white in Strive's color palette also sets him apart from Danny Sexbang in terms of innocence. This is the part of Strive's visual design that really sells to us that he's nothing like Danny. His face, and especially his eyes, are bathed in white. His eyes don't look on the world with perversion or even desire. They look at it with childlike wonder. And I think that's the perfect way to adjust Dan Avidan's visage in a way that many people can relate to. His deep passion and quiet introverted vibe match the target audience of Starlight Brigade perfectly. He's young, possibly a bit naive, but endlessly determined to literally reach for the stars. Strive is an artist. Not necessarily a visual artist either. Strive is a musician or a writer or an actor. He represents anyone and everyone who wants to create something to move other people. You could even make an argument that his symbolic meaning goes beyond that to include anyone who dutifully chooses to follow a dream. The only reason I specify artist is because of this one shot near the end, where there's a lot of people looking at what the Starlight Brigade made possible, which reminds me a lot of how emotional I get when listening to music, and I don't know, maybe I'm just wrong there. Regardless of whether Strive is an artist or just a dreamer, though, this changes the way that we view the story completely. It explains why his departure from home feels both reckless and necessary. It's why the moment that he finally departs from the safety of his planet is filled with such starstruck euphoria and is then immediately followed by a cold depiction of others who tried and failed. And it is with that feeling in mind that I want to start discussing our antagonist, the Black Pyramid. Knights of the Light Table are some of the best animators and artists in the industry, and their ability to make such a simple shape appear so daunting and devoid of life even when it's surrounded by the literal void of space is a testament to that. The Black Pyramid feels more like an unnatural force than a villain. A villain expresses something in regards to the heroes trying to stop it, even if that something is just disdain or disinterest. The Black Pyramid doesn't even give its heroes that much attention. This structure has no backstory, it has no logic or reason, and because of that, it seems like it has no weakness either. It just showed up when Strive was a child and took every light in the sky for itself, leaving the universe in an endless night with no stars to gaze on. They were there for a long time, and in an instant, they were just gone. Yet when the Starlight Brigade are ready to fight the Black Pyramid, it appears before them yet again, taking them by surprise with its presence. The Brigadiers are prepared this time, but even as they begin to do battle with the Pyramid's minions, their sights remain wholly set on it as their goal. Left with no tangible way to break through its force field, the Starlight Brigade just rammed their ships into it, causing Strive to be exposed to enemy fire. This, I think, is the best example for what the Pyramid actually is. There isn't a single point in this story that the Black Pyramid harms the Starlight Brigade directly. It takes the stars for seemingly no reason, but from a writing perspective, it likely could have destroyed Mobius at the same time using their power. When the Starlight Brigade came to attack it, its force field could have vaporized anything that touched it, or it could have used some kind of weapon that made use of the plasma from the stars it absorbed, but it doesn't. Its minions don't even attack until they see the Starlight Brigade charging towards it. The Black Pyramid is a symbol for depression. Not necessarily just depression, it's a symbol for almost any mental illness. It's a stand-in for every part of ourselves and the thoughts in our heads about what we can't do, about our limitations as people and our assumed inability to change ourselves or the world. The Black Pyramid is Strive. Not all of Strive, but it's the part of Strive that we see when he reaches out towards a star from within his ship, only to realize that what he's staring at is the light coming from his own chest, and his expression breaks. That broken despair, that moment of crushing defeat when you realize the ground has fallen away from underneath you, that is what the Black Pyramid embodies to us. Look back at our first introduction to the Black Pyramid, when Strive is just a child. As we stare into Strive's horrified expression while all the light in his world is taken away, we get a harsh cut accompanied by the even harsher beat of the song to Strive as an adult. In an instant, the Black Pyramid took away all that was good in Strive's world, and the experience literally forced Strive to mature. But even when we see him as an adult, he's still looking at the same empty sky that was left that day. He still feels pain as a result of his loss, it's just buried within him. This moment represents something difficult and sudden entering Strive's, and by extension our, life. It could be the first time you lost a loved one, or it could be the first time you ever thought about suicide, or it could just be the first time you ever doubted yourself. There's any number of new problems that this first meeting with the Black Pyramid represents, but the pyramid itself represents the kinds of problems that don't just go away. Not unless you face them yourself. I haven't been diagnosed with any sort of mental illness. I have felt depressed, sometimes often, sometimes considering suicide as an option on a regular basis, but that alone is not enough to claim a mental illness. I have suffered wild mood swings and have obsessed over seemingly minute issues at varying times before. Sometimes I wonder if I might have depression or anxiety or bipolar disorder or maybe even OCD, but I have no way to know for sure. Not until I can afford a professional examination. I am, however, friends with many people who do suffer from mental illness, and I've been their shoulder to cry on for a long time. I like to think that I can at least empathize with them well enough to know the manner in which mental illness can develop and how it can persist over time. I'm not an authority, I have no authentication, I'm just a guy on the internet. If I get something wrong here, I sincerely apologize, and I encourage you to correct me in the comments below. Mental illness can often sneak up on you. It can appear seemingly out of nowhere, flaring up for a second and making you feel terrible before it seemingly vanishes, only to show up again later just as abruptly. Sometimes it doesn't disappear. It shows up in an instant and it's just part of your life now. It can be anything from a near constant feeling of sadness and self-loathing to a rare but violent tornado of pain and sorrow. I think this is why we never see how the Black Pyramid leaves, only the way that it enters frame, and I think it's also why we always see the effects of its arrival first, then the reactions of the characters, and then the pyramid itself. Mental illnesses don't really leave, but they can seem less prominent at times, and then can flare up seemingly out of nowhere. Sometimes you don't even know that's what's happening until someone else points it out to you. And that's what the characters are doing in these moments. Every time the Black Pyramid arrives, we see something go wrong. We are the first to notice, but not always the first to understand. Then the characters look and the camera pans around or dollies back to show it. They are directing our attention to the cause of the problem. I don't think I need to explain why the pyramid taking the stars away is indicative of an overwhelming feeling that everything sucks and nothing will make it better, so instead I'd like to point out the way that the Starlight Brigade go about attacking their symbol of poor mental health. It reminds me in a really good way of the episode of Avatar when Toph is teaching Aang how to earthbend, telling him that he needs to face it head on, and she goes power gremlin and noms a rock. Which is what makes it all the more horrifying when the brigade face their problems head on only to lose their soft new friend to a total sucker punch of a shot. Depression, anxiety, pretty much any mental disorder you can think of isn't going to just go away if you leave it alone long enough. The only way to make life better after a change like that is to attack it, developing your own habits, setting your own milestones. Yes, medicine and therapy will help and they will be necessary, but all they're doing is enabling you to take charge and improve. The Starlight Brigade needs their ships to fight the pyramid, but their ships don't pilot themselves. Except maybe Ninja Brian's, we don't really see his hands on the controls much. But even when you try to fight, to improve, and to make your life better, to make yourself feel better, you are not in any way guaranteed success. At any time, something in your life can change drastically and pull the rug out from under you once again, which is what makes the fight against mental illness so difficult and harrowing and makes it feel pointless sometimes, because there's always more ships ready to shoot you down. I think it was a great decision for Starlight Brigade to be ramming themselves against an unbreakable wall in this scene, because that is honestly what it can feel like a lot of the time. You know what the problem is, you have all the tools to attack it, you give it your best, and it just doesn't work. Something doesn't happen the way it should, life doesn't work out the way you planned it, and that can make it all feel worse than it did before. It can make it all feel futile. Ugh, alright, I'm starting to feel pretty down, so I'm gonna take a second to talk about just how menacing the Black Pyramid looks in this and all scenes, because I seriously cannot get over it. This fucking polyhedron looks black as night in the endless void. If darkness is defined as the lack of light, then the Black Pyramid would be defined as the lack of the existence of light. How did the artists and animators at Kotal manage to make this thing look more endlessly black than starless space? The answer, my friends, is that they didn't. And that is the brilliance of it. Space isn't endlessly black in Starlight Brigade. In fact, it's full of life and color. Look closely at this shot where Strive is cruising through a ship graveyard. Notice the subtle bits of blue and purple in the background? And this one from Strive's cockpit. Do you see the indigo clouds hanging over? It would have been so easy to just spray a black background over everything and call it a day, but Kotal instead opted to add subtle hues of calming, majestic, and goddamn mesmerizing color to make the unlivable void of space look mystical and full of wonder. This is how they're able to make you focus on the Black Pyramid as if it's the embodiment of death itself, but it's also where the encouraging nature of the video comes from. Space is Kotal's way of saying to the viewer, I know it seems scary at first, but just get out there and you'll see. It's much better than it appears to be. And that is a prevailing theme throughout this video. From the moment Strive takes off from Mobius, his whole world is lit with color, and mere moments after that, he meets his first off-world friends. Which brings us to another big thing I want to talk about. Friendship. The power of friendship is such a commonly used trope that a lot of people likely dismiss it as a children's fairy tale, but it is nearly impossible to fight against depression without someone by your side. You need support groups, whether that's a designated support group you go to every week, or your classmates, or the boys, or your D&D group. You need someone to talk to. Friends can make or break your struggle against depression, and everyone who worked on Starlight Brigade knew that. From the moment Strive meets Dr. Sung and the rest of Twerp plus Ninja Brian, the vast majority of shots throughout the remainder of the music video are group shots or fast-cutting reaction shots featuring all 6 characters or all of their ships working together in unison. This isn't unusual for a Twerp NSP collaboration, but it is worth noting given our symbolic theme. Strive's ship doesn't even have weapons on it. It would have been impossible for him to worm his way through all of those minions without his friends providing cover fire. But even with the help of his friends, Strive still got shot, his light still faded, and his faith still broke. This can be a common occurrence in the fight against depression, and the fight to make something of yourself. Even once you have the help you need, when you have the tools for the task, and you have friends to support you, sometimes it just isn't enough. Like everyone who has a desire to create, I've struggled with an immense amount of self-doubt and insecurity involving my work. This will actually be the first time that I've published a finished work on the internet for others to see, even though I've been a frequent viewer of internet-based creations since I was very young. And as I struggled to think of which one of my ideas I wanted to put out first, and whether any of them were even worth putting out there at all, I couldn't help but be reminded of Strive making that split-second decision to enter the asteroid and leave his planet with the intent to get the light back. Halfway between the black and gray is no place for a life to waste away. It was so much easier to pretend that I was content just working at my day job and playing video games after I graduated high school. So much easier to just stop going to college after my grades started to drop, thinking that I didn't really need a degree to become an actor. So easy for me to live life like I never wanted to be anything better anyway. And maybe I needed that time of my life, maybe I needed to pretend like everything was fine when it really wasn't so that I could feel like I had control over my situation. Maybe I needed to just be, for a while at least. But that's no way to spend your whole life. There is nothing about that existence that anybody should have to classify as okay. If Dan Avidan had been willing to smoke weed and play Morrowind forever, he wouldn't have started Ninja Sex Party, he wouldn't have joined the Game Grumps, and he wouldn't have been able to quit his day job. If Twerp had been willing to tour as a B-list comedic synthetic funk band for all time, they never would have been able to craft masterpieces like Pets and Strike a Pose. You know that part early on in this video where I said that Twerp were really bad at coming up with good lyrics on their own? Well, that used to be the case. I started writing this script, having only listened to the songs leading up to Starlight Brigade on Twerp's albums and EPs, and as such, I didn't listen to the rest of Together Through Time until a few days afterward. Listening to Pets had me tearing up before I really understood what the song was about, and Strike a Pose feels more relevant right now than I bet it would have been in 2018 if I'd listened to it back then. Beyond just being prophetic and heartwarming, though, the last few songs of Together Through Time truly felt like the band coming into its own. It was only after listening to these songs that I really thought about why Twerp talked so much about us living on a pale blue dot and how small we are in the universe. I'd heard so many astronomy teachers and deep shows talking about our place in the universe as if we are completely unimportant to it. I just assumed that was the mindset that Twerp was going into their songs with, and I thought it was a tonal disconnect from the happy, fun dance party vibe that their instrumentals tended to have. But then it clicked when I really thought about their song Life Party. That song is so beautiful, and it's still so fun, and it talks about how lucky and fortunate we are to even be alive and be able to question things like our place in the universe. The nearest planet that could even potentially host something akin to human life, Wolf 1061, is 14 light years away. Or, for clarity, 8.23 times 10 to the 13th power miles away. But we're here, and we're alive. And that is something to celebrate, not to mourn. Torp is saying that we're fortunate to be given this life at all, and that means we should enjoy it, live it to the fullest, treat life like it's a party. This is a powerful statement, and one that absolutely bears repeating as many times as it takes for people to get it. So, I'm sorry for saying that they were bad writers. I couldn't be more happy to have been proven wrong. It's no wonder that the band that turned as depressing a topic as the improbability of humanity's existence into an uplifting song was able to make an inspirational one out of the prospect of the end of all light. The way that all the drum beats sound kinda bass-boosted, even the snare, the techno-fed bass that sets the tension and accentuates all of the higher and lighter sounds in the song, the fact that the guitar, which is the centerpiece of most songs it's included in, is placed so far in the background of this one that I genuinely had to listen for it to even find out when and how it's included. Every piece of the instrumental for this song was geared around making you feel without you even knowing that they're doing it. Torp wanted their audience to pay attention to the vocals and the lyrics in this song, something they actively work against in the majority of the other songs they've put out. I mean, Torp's instrumentals are the best part of the band, they're nothing short of fantastic. But only the experts in a certain field can perform their art so beautifully, you don't even acknowledge it as abnormally grand. You just accept it as part of your life now. It immediately puts your mind and soul into the state the performance exists in, and if you want to analyze it at all, you have to first wake yourself up enough to do so. I'm not exaggerating either. I must have listened to this song over 50 times more than I needed to while writing this script because I was so enthralled by the music that I just kind of listened to it, and I didn't even watch for the moment I needed to analyze. The music practically puts you to sleep at the same time that it keeps your eyes and ears open, focused in on the animation and especially on the lyrics. Speaking of the lyrics, Dan's writing and singing for this song are seriously impressive. Guy spends most of his songs writing about stuffing his cucumber in a salad bowl, then he turns around and writes this epic story about saving the world and finding a family. A story that, again, is based in the ideals of fighting mental illness to become an artist. A story Dan has lived through, and I imagine so have the majority of the others involved with it. I mean, the visual depiction of Strive's expressions in these final moments of the cockpit are just so visceral. It's impossible to think that the people drawing this had no idea what it felt like to be in Strive's position, trapped in a little box, reaching out to the world, begging for this one scrap of light that's just barely out of reach, only to watch the world shut them out. Like I said, the Knights of the Light Table are absolutely amazing artists, but one of the ways in which they really shine is their line work. The amount of definition to these characters is really impressive, but that definition set in a format that makes it look so much like an old cartoon or a comic book is what really stuns me. This kind of definition to the characters and their characters' expressions is what gives Kotal's animation the emotional punch they use so well. The punch that's snapping me out of my negative funk and getting me going. Because everyone involved in this project has helped each other to create something wonderful, but none of them would even be there at all if they'd let their problems overwhelm them. That's what this scene of Strive's child self reaching up for the star is. The same star that Strive thought he saw from his cockpit. The one that turned out to be inside of him all along. It's easy to think that you don't have to do anything. It's easy to get into the mindset that the world is just going to kick you down or keep you from success no matter what you do. It's easy to give up. But fuck does it hurt. It is painful, excruciatingly painful to feel like you're guaranteed failure. Like nothing you do is worth anything. Like nobody's going to notice what you make even if it's good. It hurts to think that nothing you make could ever be good. But when you have that support structure, when you do go to therapy, and you have that medication, and you do have friends, and you do have the time, can you really fool yourself into thinking that you're guaranteed failure? Especially when you haven't even really tried yet. Doesn't it make you mad that you refuse to try just because you think you'll fail? That's what was missing when Strive got shot down. his drive. And that's what he saw in his reflection, the light inside of his chest, the star he was looking for all this time. Passing through the Black Pyramid, our symbol of depression, anxiety, fear, doubt, tragedy, and uncertainty, the Starlight Brigade find an immense amount of energy surrounding them. This electricity is pure power racing through their ships and, by extension, their bodies as they traverse through their own grief and grievances. I don't think this is the power of the pyramid. I think this is the power of the brigade itself. The path to recovery can feel strange. You don't always see the improvements. You don't always recognize that you're feeling better. And even if you do, you don't always understand that it's because of your own actions, your own power. I assume that most people don't, and they attribute it to their friends and family, and maybe their therapist or support group, or even just to their medication. I think that's the surprise we see on the brigade's faces as they pass through the pyramid, that misunderstanding that they are experiencing strength, not gaining or possessing it. This electricity is more than just the power to progress through mental illness, though. It is the potential energy of creation. Getting ready to release a piece of art you poured your heart into feels like you're full of so much excitement and dread and just energy that once you pass a certain point, there is no going back from it. You have to keep going, regardless of what obstacles lie in your path, because sink or swim, you can't bear this creation not existing in the world for 1 minute longer. This is the moment when Strive yells out the titular line as he and his fellow brigadiers exit the pyramid, shattering it and making it implode. This moment is so emotionally powerful that I'm kind of tearing up just thinking about it. Whenever I think that nothing will get better, that I'll never publish a book, that I'll never get my break in acting, that I'll never be able to start a YouTube channel, this moment in this one music video just... it gives me hope. Right now, the stars are gone. The light is gone, and even in its absence is a darkness more void than the night itself. If you want to create something, to change something, make something different or better, to brighten up this grim, dark world, then you are already in possession of everything you need to make that happen. We are all, literally and figuratively, made of stardust. We can't just let it go to waste. We have no fate but that of which we make. We are noble as the oath that we undertake. We are the Great Starlight Brigade. Thanks for watching. Like I said, this is the first creative thing I put a lot of time and effort into making, so I appreciate any feedback you could give me in the comments below. Also, if you could leave a like or dislike letting me know how you felt about it. I know it's kind of weird that I'm asking for dislikes too, but I want to know if this half-baked idea I had has any potential of working out. And hey, if you liked it enough and want to see more of it, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. And hit the little dingy thingy next to that so that you know when I upload new videos. I'm planning to upload a lot of smaller vlog-style videos in between uploads of my big projects just to tie people over. Most of those videos are going to be video game stuff, anime reviews, meme reviews, definitely some role-playing videos, and a couple other ideas I have that I'll outline in a new video coming up soon. I'm hoping to upload at least once every 2 weeks. We'll see how that goes. I'm not very good at keeping up to a schedule, but hey, you gotta get started somewhere. I also want to give a quick shout out to Wolfenheart for drawing my puppet. She did an amazing job on it. Unfortunately, we had a bit of a falling out, so I'm not going to be using her art in the future. But I do recommend you guys use it and hit her up for commissions. I'm pretty sure she's still doing commissions. I'll have a link to her DeviantArt and other social medias so you can check. Also, she's super into dragons, so if you've got that dragon you want drawn, go ahead and hit her up. She'll do a wonderful job on it. But especially if you sat through my entire analysis and this end card, I just want to say thank you. Genuinely, from the bottom of my heart. This is a project I've had in my head for a few years now, and I only just got the courage to actually make it and post it. This still doesn't feel real to me, but hopefully that'll change once it's online. So really, thank you for giving me your time. Now go enjoy the rest of it. You've got a lot of living to do. Take it easy. I'll see you guys later. Peace.